How's it going? Listen, a large part of me wanted to avoid really even talking about the situation because I think a lot of times we spend too much time focusing on celebrity nonsense, and then when you start really thinking about like this thing happening in the middle of like a war happening, and systemic oppression is real, and all these other issues, but we're gonna focus on Will Smith slapping the dog mess out of Chris Rock right now. Anyway, I decided to give my opinion because I feel like I've heard so much nonsense over all this time that it's really frustrating. For one, you hear people say stupid stuff like, "Yo, man, Will didn't slap August Alsina." It's like I don't understand how these situations are related at all. Like literally, one has nothing to do with the other, right? Like, okay, here's a situation where somebody is insulting my wife to the point that my wife feels upset. And the other one is a situation where my wife had a relationship with somebody with or without my blessing. Like if we have an open marriage, then the idea that my wife would be in these kind of sort of relationships, I don't understand why that would justify a slap. I could say maybe it might have been disrespectful for August Alsina to actually speak on the situation because the couple have been pretty private about their relationships. Obviously, something they didn't want exposed, but at the end of the day, I don't see why you would go around and slap him. Also, we don't know if he slapped him behind closed doors. We have no idea. But at the end of the day, these situations are completely unrelated. But there is a bunch of backstory and there is a bunch of stuff that is related to this incident that I feel like a lot of people don't know or just kind of gloss over. So let's talk about historically who Chris Rock has been to the black community, who Jada and Will have been to the black community, and how these things have intersected and interacted in ways that might have resulted in the thing that we saw. So for one, Chris Rock, he's a stand-up comedian. Everything he's done has been pretty freaking funny. I've never been a huge fan of Chris Rock because I found his voice to be annoying when I was a kid, so I didn't watch him. But I have heard like little excerpts and snippets from things that he said, and it's been incredibly funny to me. One of the things that Chris Rock said was the thing that has made Chris Rock the most famous, or I would say the thing that his most famous skit was specifically one that he's regretted and has been really harmful, which some people would say is anti-black. The joke basically was this. It was basically he was asking the question, who's more racist, white people or black people? He went on to say that white people are not as racist as black people. Black people are more racist than white people because black people hate black people too. It's a pretty funny skit. Or a funny bit. He goes on to talk about how black people be going around having a good old time at a barbecue and so on and so forth, and then some ignorant niggas end up showing, kind of making a distinction between black people and niggas, and basically saying like niggas are like the bad black people that and obviously this has been incredibly toxic because this kind of feeds into this narrative that you'll see that some white people will say to people who they consider to be good black people, and they'll say you're one of the good ones, which really kind of paints a light on like the rest of all other black people, one of the good ones. Like the majority of them are bad, but you're an okay one. And so it was really, really harmful. And it also gave rise to a bunch of toxic discourse where people were able to like kind of echo the things that Chris Rock had said. Like basically saying black people are this way. Not all, but some black people are this way. And it gave them a voice to start discussing, I guess, what they would consider negative stereotypes generally against black people. And so he obviously super regretted it and said, okay, yeah, this is one of the harmful things that I did, and I wish I'd never said this because it caused some issues, right? So that's Chris Rock. He then went on after like a successful stand-up career to go ahead and do a documentary called Good Hair. And good hair is another one of those phrases that when you look at it kind of has some negative stereotypes associated with it because typically like the inference is that if you have hair that like kind of is more silky, that is not as kinky, that is something that is more European on a black person, then we would say, oh, they have good hair. You have like a mixed child and their hair is more European, they'll say they have good hair, which means that non-mixed children, or children who have black hair or 4C hair or whatever, have bad hair. And so when you are already going there and you're making this documentary, which plenty of black women and black people as a whole kind of felt was offensive, then and on top of this, your skit is this thing, then it's already like you're kind of whatever. Fast forward to 2016 at the Grammys, and now you have Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith boycotting the Oscars. I'm sorry, yeah, not the Grammys, the Oscars. In 2016, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith decided to boycott the Oscars. Jada was the one who was outspoken about it, but Will, of course, supported his wife. And they decided that one of the reasons was because there was no black inclusion. In all of the four major categories, no black people were nominated. On top of the fact that it had always been directed by, it had always been directed by white people. There was always a white man pretty much directing the Oscars. And then they were talking about the fact that black people were always encouraged to like, be the presenters of awards and things like that. So they can contribute to the Oscars, but they never felt like their artistic contributions were worthy of the accolades. And so you have people like Will Smith, who was at the time, I think, one of the highest, most bankable actors in all of Hollywood, who had one of the most successful careers in all of Hollywood. I think he was like number 2 behind Tom Cruise. And this guy has never won an Oscar, despite some of the diversity he's played in his roles, despite some of the pivotal roles that he's had in Hollywood. Literally one of the most recognizable faces in the world, never winning an Oscar, though, despite his amazing acting. And so his wife became the voice and figurehead of this movement, which was to boycott the Oscars to ensure that they start creating black inclusion. And I think I loved one of the statements that she made about it, that at a certain point when you're asking to be included in something, or when you're asking for a certain level of respect, that simple request of acting is to, like, you're losing your dignity. You're giving up your dignity by asking someone to respect you. After a while, you start respecting and loving yourself and kind of removing yourself from those people. And I love that kind of mentality. I think it was a really powerful statement. And it was so powerful, in fact, that plenty of people, and like, different white folks, was giving up Oscars talking about, I feel like you guys are doing this thing. This does seem like it is, a little bit discriminatory. And so then they were like kind of standing in solidarity with that. Chris Rock was hosting the Oscars that year. And Jada Pinkett Smith gave Chris Rock her blessing and said, hey, I can't think of a better person to host the Oscars than you. So it wasn't like they were like really angry at him for doing it. But here again, while he's at the Oscars, he takes a shot at Jada Pinkett. Basically, he says something like, Jada Pinkett, ain't she on like a TV show? And he says, Jada Pinkett, like, boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. Like, I wasn't invited. Funny joke. I laughed when I first heard it. But at the end of the day, when you start thinking about the fact that we're talking about Hollywood having this exclusion from like black accolades and supporting blackness when it comes to things like filmmaking and film contributions, and then you have this guy, a black guy, who previously had done the good hair thing and previously had done this really terrible skit that had been used in a very anti-black way. And this guy decides to take a shot at the person who has become the figurehead of a movement trying to ensure that the Oscars recognize that black inclusion is a necessary step, right? I'm just juxtaposing a thing so we understand the history of this relationship and the history of Chris Rock. Fast forward a little bit later. Now we get to a place where I want to say 2018, 2019, somewhere around. Chris Rock literally sitting inside of a thing. They have a show on HBO, I believe it was, or maybe it was Apple. I don't know. They have a show called Talking Funny, I believe. And it's with comedians where they just kind of sit around and do little conversations. And Chris Rock is there, Seinfeld, Louis C.K. And he makes a dig at like Louis C.K., a funny thing. And he says basically like, yo, man, you're one of the worst people. He basically says all the negative things that we say about black people, we say about you. And Louis C.K. responds and says, so you're saying I'm a nigger? And everyone laughs. And is like, yes, you are the niggerest. Chris Rock responds, yes, you are the niggerest. Like, da-da-da-da. And everyone's kind of laughing still, including Louis C.K. And then Seinfeld steps up and says, I don't think he has the qualifications to do. Think about that for a second. Seinfeld, the Jew in the room, is speaking up against Louis C.K. making this statement. Meanwhile, Ricky Gervais ends up saying it. And then he says it again. He says, yeah, that's kind of the difference between us. Me and Chris, we say nigger on stage. You two don't. And so now he said it a bunch, right? And he even does that uncomfortable laugh when he says it. When he says it that time, when someone's like knows that they shouldn't be doing something, but they're doing it and they're testing the water to see. I know you've probably experienced that if you've ever been around a white person that says nigga to you. Like they might say that word and then they kind of like laugh and chuckle to like try to smooth it over to make sure like, is this okay? Because there's like this trepidation around like whether they should say the word. Yeah, he did that, and of course Chris did not check him, and Seinfeld ends up checking him and basically says, yeah, I don't think he would do that. And then it was like, yeah, well, we say it in private. But you, and then Seinfeld was like, I never have. And then he went on to say, I don't find the humor in it. And he says, apparently you have. And he says, yeah, but I never found the humor in it, and nor have I ever looked for it. And the moment was like pretty funny to me because it's like, here we have this man, Chris Rock, who makes a documentary called Good Hair, makes this really, really inflammatory joke, insults the person who's the face of the Oscars not being black inclusive, and then allows Louis C.K. to say the N word multiple times in his presence and doesn't check him at all until Seinfeld has to be the one to check him. So you have all of those things, right, leading up to this moment, and now we have the Oscars once again, and we have Jada Pinkett Smith, who's been in this relationship with Will Smith and has this autoimmune disorder, which is causing her to lose her hair, in a condition called alopecia. I think it's like alopecia areata, I believe it is. And so here we have this situation where obviously this man has to be aware of like how sensitive black hair is to black women. So you have the state of California just recently passed this legislation that says it's illegal to discriminate against black women or black hairstyles, like in your hiring practices. In other words, you can't say, oh, because she's wearing cornrows, it's unprofessional, or any kind of a fro is unprofessional, or black hairstyles are unprofessional. It needs to be straightened and pressed and permed. Like none of that is legal anymore. You're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of just like kind of natural hair. So you have that. And so we are recognizing that this has been an issue specifically. We already know the phrase good hair has been used to kind of demonize black women, or belittle black women's natural state of hair. And then you have Chris Rock being one of the people that's been made aware of that. And you already have this history of you doing these things which people can say are somewhat anti-black in a way. And now you, at this Oscars, decide to take a shot at Will Smith's wife. And I think it's like, all of those things, all of that history, like stacking up and juxtaposed, kind of seems like, man, like you should have known. Now, people can say he didn't know that she had this thing. What I can say is what he did know was the sensitivity around black women and their hair. I'm not like Jada Pinkett had kept it a secret. She had literally gone on and talked about it on the Red Table Talks. It was a widely known thing. He just chose to make this joke, and so some people feel like, yo, that's like a pretty gross thing. And what's really funny is in that interview, the one where he allowed Louis C.K. to say the N-word multiple times and Ricky Gervais, where Seinfeld had to check him, in that interview he talked about the fact that on his show they had made it a point that you want to talk about what people do but never talk about what people are or who people are. And I find it funny because when you start talking about autoimmune disorders, this isn't an act of her shaving her head. This is an act of like her body doing something against her will, that she's done everything she can, from injecting steroids to different sort of diets and trying to de-stress and all of these things to get rid of this issue. She's done all of that. And despite doing all that, she can't seem to fix it. So her only solution is to cut her hair extremely low so that it's at least even. You take a shot there, supposedly ignorant of it. I feel like, and then people like kind of take issue with Will Smith laughing in that situation, where it's like, oh yeah, Will Smith laughed about it. He was laughing, the camera saw it, and then he got upset. And I think it makes all the sense in the world. I think we've all been in that situation where you're maybe telling jokes with your friends, and you guys are kind of going around and just kind of like, taking shots at each other or in the group chat or whatever. And then you see a message or you see a joke. And as the joke lands, you're laughing at it, and you look over at the person to see their reaction, and you see like a hint of sting behind those eyes. You start to see like, ooh, that one cut a little deep. In those moments, if we're decent people, it's when you kind of get into that protective mode and you start doing this thing. All right, y'all, hey, no more jokes. All right, we got it. All right, we're done. Good stuff, right? And you start trying to like calm down the room or stop all of that. That's what happened in that situation, except these aren't actually friends. So you took a shot at my wife, and I know that I've been in this business long enough that if I react to it in a negative way, it'll just arm people to talk more trash about me. So I'm gonna just laugh instinctively. But when I look over and see my wife of 20 years that I know more so than anybody else, and I reflect on the fact of what this condition has been and how desperate she's been to try to fix this thing, and probably the days that I've sat there and tried to comfort her and like having to support her and tell her how beautiful she is, despite the fact that she had to cut her hair, knowing that black hair is particularly sensitive. When I see all that in somebody's face, yeah, the laugh is gone. All of that, yeah, I'm just gonna laugh and do the basic thing that we do. Someone's taking a shot at me, and I'm just gonna laugh it off. That goes out the window, and I go into protective mode. And I feel like you can't analyze this situation like in a vacuum. You have to start looking at like just what the narrative has been around their marriage. Again, you have a Hollywood power couple. Will Smith is literally at one point the second most bankable actor in all of freaking Hollywood. He's the most bankable black actor in all of Hollywood. And you have him married to Jada Pinkett, and you got all of this, like you have these successful children, and this dude is doing all that he can do. He's been the Hollywood good guy. He's been literally at the forefront of so much black inclusion and black acceptance. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was really, really good and worked at dignifying sort of the black experience, because of obviously Hollywood had been doing for so many years of just only portraying blacks in subservient and negative roles. So you have him in a show that he's doing in which his dad is a freaking judge and his mom is a lawyer, and like they're going to like, upper prep schools and things like that, and he's from the hood, but he has whatever. So you have all of this, and so you're showing a very positive representation of a black family, right? So you have that. Then you think about like you think about him as a rapper and how he's like done all this music, and he's the very first rap group. Him and DJ Jazzy Jeff, they're the first black people to the first rap album to get nominated for a Grammy. Not nominated, to win a Grammy. The first rap Grammy ever given was to Will Smith. So when we obviously know that hip hop and rap have been very, very black music, and they were originally music that were speaking about the culture, and a lot of it used to be uplifting music and so on and so forth. And black people have always kind of expressed their art and expressed their struggle through their artistic endeavors. And so now you have this person doing this music and legitimizing it by making it win a Grammy, and he's this person. So it's not like these people are like completely estranged to the black experience and estranged to being sort of black emblems in a way that are really positive in Hollywood. So you have this, and you have this couple, and you have this dude August Alsina who comes out with this story unnecessarily, and now they're kind of forced to end up dealing with this thing on the Red Table Talk, and people kind of like demonize Jada and say like, oh, she dragged him on her show and da 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 da. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but Will Smith is the executive producer of the Red Table Talk. If he didn't want to be there, he wouldn't be there. Like, he has control over how that show goes, just like everything else. So I don't understand like she dragged him anywhere. But it comes to a situation when people start saying all sorts of nonsense and you don't do anything about it, and you don't say any word, it creates the August Alsina situation. So Will Smith and Jada Smith decided to go on to that conversation, to the Red Table Talk, and discuss this thing that they would have otherwise have kept private had August Alsina not decided to leak things in an interview in order to go ahead and promote his album, which still did all of plastic. So you look at that, and then just after that, then you have all these people like start referring to Jada as a narcissist, as an evil wench, and so on and so forth, and all of this conversation around like how Will Smith is a fresh cuck of Bel-Air, and all of these insults that this nigga has just had to kind of carry on his chest for God knows how long, and just hold that, and that's it, he's just holding it. So when you look at those kind of things and you recognize that he can't win now, the internet is just making memes about this dude nonstop. And all of this. I mean, even in this scenario in which he slapped Chris Rock, the first thing they do is, hey, what about August Alsina? You didn't slap him. So you have all of this. And Will Smith is in a situation now where he has to discuss this thing, or else it's just, the stories are going to, run wild. People are literally calling her a child molester and all sorts of nonsense. So they address it. And, according to them, they had split up at the time. They were no longer together. She had this relationship with August Alsina, like during the, in the interim. And, I mean, it is what it is. Do they have an open marriage? I have no idea. Nobody does, besides the people that they've ever been, involved with. But that has literally nothing to do with Chris Rock. But it does in a little way, and I'll kind of explain how. You see, in that moment when Will Smith, like, hears this insult, and he looks over at his wife, the person he's been married to for 20 years, the mother of his children, and he sees the pain because she didn't laugh. So regardless of how he felt, maybe he thought it was like a funny joke. I didn't think it was that good. It was the joke was kind of garbage. It was like it was the worst of references, right? You make a joke about, you make this comparison to G.I. Jane. And I think the only thing that they really have in common was the fact that G.I. Jane literally like cut her hair, right? Because it seems like that joke is a little bit, I could see where that joke just doesn't land very well, because like the operative word here is choice, right? And G.I. Jane wanted to be in a male dominated space. And so she chose to get into the Navy SEALs and like try to fight her way into it and then cut her hair off and so on and so forth. And so, like, you look at that and you compare a person who's suffering from an autoimmune disorder that can't control it and her hair being that way, and you make this comparison. I don't know, it sounds kind of awful, especially if you start considering the fact that we've already had these narratives specifically about the making black women masculine, where there's already conversations constantly happening where like in video game representations and movie representations and things, they do everything they can to make black women more masculine. So when you see that, it's like, yeah, no, I don't really think this comparison is really good. The joke doesn't land. And when he looks over and sees this hurt in this wife, and he thinks about the struggle that she's had and what she's gone through and what black women have gone through, because it's not like they're not culturally conscious couple. So when you see that, you're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. Do you sit there, say nothing, and do anything, and do nothing, and then just hope to God that the situation will be whatever, and you deal with it in behind closed doors? I think that's the worst step, right? Because I've always said the best way to deal with something is to deal with it in the form that it was delivered to you. I'm sorry, that's a bad way of saying it. Simply put, if something happens in public, you correct it in public. If something happens in private, you deal with it in private. Don't insult me publicly and then come back to me privately and apologize. The apology needs to be as loud as the insult, as loud or louder. All of these really insulting things, they're already demonizing Jada, and all of this nonsense is happening. And then now this guy takes his shot. After his last time when he hosted the Oscars, he took a shot at my wife while she was trying to do black inclusion and all of these things. But now you take a shot while I'm sitting here. And so then it's like, okay, if I sit and do nothing, then of course, maybe, people start making more jokes. Like, yeah, look at him. You just sat there and let this dude insult his wife. Imagine that car ride home, right? So then he can choose to do nothing. He can go ahead and just yell obscenities. Like, he's in a rock and a hard place. If he responds, he almost gives weight to the joke. If he stays silent, he makes himself look like a joke to some. So other people said other nonsense. Like, well, he should have just waited until he got his Oscar and then in his speech condemned him. The thing is, he had no idea he was winning an Oscar, because you got to remember, this is a man with a career that's been like what, almost 3 decades. I mean, it's a really, really long time he's had a career in this thing, and he's never gotten a Grammy despite all of his amazing role. You're not going to tell me he didn't play Ali. You're not going to tell me that Concussion movie didn't go ham. So nothing he's done has gained him an Oscar. I don't know what would make him think this movie would get one. Not that he didn't deserve it for the other one. Not that he didn't play Richard in an amazing way. Not that this movie wasn't inspiring and beautiful. But he has nothing to know for sure that he's getting this Oscar. So it's like, okay, I can just hope to God that I get the public forum to be able to discuss this, right, like at this Oscars, or I just go ahead and wait and let it simmer for a while before I go in and deliver this, right? So I think waiting to get the Oscar, I think that's just obviously not an option, because you don't know that you're going to win an Oscar. Then someone said, oh, well, he kind of blacked out and went and rushed the stage and did. No, not at all. Everything in this moment shows restraint for Will Smith. Again, and you might say, well, how do you show restraint? By hitting the person. Well, when you decide you're this close to this person, you could just rush him, which of course puts him on alarm. Maybe the security jump up and stop you. Maybe the cameras go off or whatever. Whatever you decide to do in this moment, you have to do it. And he walks up to Chris. Walks up to him. That shows restraint right there. Doesn't look like a blackout to me. Slaps him. Open hand. Could have punched this dude's lights out. You see the power, or you see the size difference. You see the power difference in these two men. He could have slapped him probably. Instead, he decides to go over there with an open hand and slap him. He walks away afterwards. He has a smile on his face while he's walking away. A lot of us thought it was a joke until you see him sitting in that chair yelling, "Keep my wife's name out your effing mouth." So I don't think it's a blackout moment. I think it's a calculated moment. And I think in that case, Will Smith had a choice. He could either sit there and go ahead and endure these memes and endure the pain. I mean, let his wife endure that. Or he could go ahead and step up and do something. Right? Right or wrong, you can look at the situation and say that he handled it. And I think when he's yelling at this dude to keep my wife's name out your effing mouth, this isn't because of one joke. This is because of that thing. And you have to think about the years and years of people like literally trashing her, calling her an adulteress, calling her a child molester, and saying that she's a narcissist and she's controlling Will and all of these things. And so when you have all of that happening, yeah, I feel like Will Smith didn't just slap Chris Rock. He slapped everybody that he couldn't slap over all these years when he's enduring these memes, and he has to be the the good guy. He's the good guy, and he's carrying that weight on his shoulders. So I feel like in that moment, I think is where it's finally like, you know what, enough is enough. I don't think that was a message to just Chris. I think that was a message to all of Hollywood. I think another thing that really, really bothered me about the situation is like hearing like other people like Amy Schumer once again centering herself in a situation that had literally nothing to do with her, talking about I'm still traumatized and I did. Freak out of here. Freak out of here. I'll tell you what, I'm traumatized. I'm traumatized, but no. I don't need to go in on Amy. I'm doing it. I don't care. I'm traumatized by the fact that when Netflix was doing their specials and they paid Dave Chappelle. I always compare those two mentally. I don't know why. Maybe because they're both the goats. But when they were paying Dave Chappelle something he rightfully deserved for being the best comedian in the world, Amy Schumer decides to step up and say, well, you guys aren't paying me enough. Y'all could pay me more. And it's like, bruh, you're not funny. You're not funny. You steal jokes. You're like, nothing about you is worthy of this. But the Hollywood machine being what it is, and them propping her up, she actually got an increase in her pay. Meanwhile, Monique, they're trying to offer her some paltry $250,000, and it's like, yo, like this is literally one of the funniest women on the planet, infinitely funnier than Amy Schumer. The freak is going on. But at the time, Monique was blackballed unfairly, and we'll talk about that in another video maybe one day. I don't really like talking about celebrity stuff, so probably never. Anyway, so then she's centering herself, like, I'm traumatized, and I feel like, like this was so bad, and we need an apology because we worked hard. And it's like, please stop it. Please stop. It's had nothing to do with you. I'll tell you who's traumatized is black women seeing once again some dude come on stage, insult black women hair, like in front of the world, right? On the Oscar stage on the night when it's really black empowerment because we have a black director of the Oscars. Will Smith, her husband, is finally winning a freaking Oscar. Questlove, one of the best musicians on the planet, best drummers on the planet, somebody who's been like an emblem of sort of the black culture and black music and black positivity. You got that dude getting a Grammy. So an Oscar. So you have all of these things happening, and you choose that moment to go ahead and use your anti-blackness and insult black women's hair there. Now you might say, oh, it's just a light joke. It's just a light joke. But I feel like Chris Rock should know better, right? Because he's been well aware of how sensitive black hair is. I think there was another time. This isn't the first time Will Smith slapped a person. There was another occasion where he did so. There was a situation where he was being interviewed by some dude, and some dude went to go give him a hug. Like some random person in Hollywood, he decided to give the dude a hug back like normal. The dude literally started like going out of his way to kiss him in the lips. He was like, "Whoa, you don't kiss me. What's wrong with you?" And slapped him. It was a very small backhand, and he just kind of moved on and said, "Yeah, dude tried to kiss me in my mouth." But Chris Rock is just the second person, and I feel like there comes a point where someone can get to it where they start feeling frustrated and they feel like enough has happened that kind of causes them to get into this sort of vein. I don't think that it's right to ever resort to violence. But I think there's also a true statement that you really can't tell people how to react. And I've never been in a situation where I've been married for 20 years and the woman of my my wife, the mother of my children, is insulted and I see pain behind her. I've never been in that situation, so I can't tell you how I can act. But I know plenty of us react for far, far less. Video gamers will start calling people all sorts of racist things and saying that they hope their mothers have cancer over a loss in a video game and telling people to kill themselves, right? You got those kinds of things that are happening on the internet. You got people wishing death on random politicians. You got people getting violent over like freaking televisions, like during Black Friday sales. But these same individuals are the ones that'll step forward afterwards and then say stuff like, violence is never the answer. And I don't think you should have done that. Freak out of here. Everybody feels safe behind their monitors and behind their keyboards and on their phones, saying what the freak they want to about how other people should react when we're talking about somebody being hurt over a joke that seems like it touches on an autoimmune disorder that's outside of their control, which is particularly stinging. I could see all of that. Now, does that justify him doing that? Absolutely not. Am I glad that he showed the restraint and used an open hand? Absolutely. Do I think that All comedians should be terrified. I think that's super hyperbolic and I think that's ridiculous. But go ahead and get you some security just in case. Who knows, right? This isn't the first time where we had somebody jumping on stage and fighting a comedian. That's happened plenty of times before. D.L. Hughley has had stuff thrown at him. It's not something that's unheard of. And maybe you might say that Will Smith is normalizing it. I don't think so. I think, when you start looking at Hollywood, if you think that just because Hollywood did something that you can do it, I don't know, people are going to be in for a rude awakening. Because I think some of these comedians got hands. And I don't think that everybody can take that the same way. Um, I don't know. I feel like in this situation, I don't know that Will Smith lost a lot of stock for people, for a lot of people. I think there's plenty of women that feel particularly proud of what he did because it showed a man protecting his wife. And I get it was just words, but plenty of people make the statement about how black women are not protected to the same degree as everyone else. We saw how people got away with all sorts of attacks on black women. For example, that I forget what the officer's name was, but who had assaulted specifically and targeted black women and was raping them as a police officer and got away with it for God knows how many years and with how many women he was getting away with it for. It was absurd. And these women didn't feel like they could come forward and talk about it, right? Or the Me Too movement, how it was about black women and almost got no traction until it became a white woman focused thing about white women in Hollywood. Then all of a sudden everybody jumps on board, right? And then of course it's used against black men in that case. Now my point being that there's always these conversations about the protection of black women, and Will Smith in this moment stood up and did it. So I would say for those kind of people, he gains quite a bit of stock. I think there's plenty of ire against Chris Rock, specifically within the black community, for all of his previous things that I've already laid out to you in that earlier juxtaposition. So I would say with all of those things, some of those people, Will Smith gained some stock. Fortunately, Will Smith is well off enough that he'll probably be able to ride this one the way Dave Chappelle did. You can try your best to insult him. You can try your best to cancel him and try to mislabel him. But at the end of the day, he's had too long of a career. We know who this man is. I'll be seeing him May 3rd, Hollywood Bowl. I'm really excited. Thanks, Bryn. I think I would say that one of the best ways to protect black women is to not tolerate BS that's directed at them. And I think this is what Will Smith did. What really hurts my heart a little bit is all of the people who started speaking out about how bad Will Smith is. I'm going to just name off a few of them and explain to you why these people's opinions shouldn't matter. Tim Allen decided to talk bad about Will Smith for open hand slapping Chris Rock in defense of his wife over a joke that was attacking her autoimmune disorder from the individual who decided to make shots about her when she was talking about black inclusion in the Oscars. Tim Allen makes this joke, the person who was convicted for drug possession and drug smuggling, and the guy who's been accused of God knows how many different counts of sexual assault from different people. Tim Allen makes that statement. You got Alec Baldwin, who punched the photographer in the face in an altercation, but Will Smith shouldn't have slapped anybody there. You got I just think it's really, really insane to me, right? So you got these people that, and then of course, everyone knows their friends. People literally fight people over someone stepping over their Nikes, but once again, all of a sudden, Will Smith slapping somebody, it's just gone too far. We expect this nigga to be perfect. I don't. I don't know, man. Let me see. Is there anything else? I feel like this problem really kind of boils down to virtue signaling from both people, right? I think you have the people who will sit there and just say he's protecting a woman, right, while ignoring the fact that he did slap another person, right? But you have the people who will sit there and say he's just a violent person. This shows who Will Smith truly is, right? While ignoring the fact that Chris Rock did something that was incredibly insulting. And I think here's the really interesting thing to me, and I think it almost feels like a splash or a dash of racism when people start saying things like, "Oh, we know who Will Smith truly is." If 30 years in freaking Hollywood and a single slap can be the thing to undermine your entire view of this person, if that single incident is enough to color everything, yeah, you're just a fickle racist. I'm saying it point blank. Because I think Will Smith has demonstrated in enough time who he is as a person and what his character has been. And he's been in enough situations where enough people have attacked him and he's had all of these reasons to respond in different ways and he's chosen not to. But because he finally does once, you say that's enough for us to go ahead and paint his character. I don't stand by that. So I feel like there's plenty of people where I would probably, I wouldn't necessarily care was to make some sort of joke that could be directed specifically at Candace Owens and something, I would sit that one out. I'll just go ahead and just let that rock and just be like, yeah, um, it is what it is. I think this slap actually helps Chris Rock quite a bit. He made Chris Rock more relevant, right? I don't remember anybody talking about Chris Rock except for, him insulting Jada Pinkett Smith in 2016. I really hadn't heard his name much. So I feel like Will Smith did Chris Rock a favor. Do I think it's the wrong thing to do? I'll just say that. Obviously, we probably would not ever encourage someone. I can't say that I know for sure the exact reason or why he did it the way. But what I can say is when you start really analyzing the situation as opposed to just trying to make some really short, like thoughtless take of he just shouldn't have did it, I think you can start seeing some things where it's like, man, I can understand how he got there, why we're here, and it starts to make a little bit more sense. Does any of that justify it? No. I think it's like looking at a person who's a bully at a school and saying, hey, this kid's a bully because his dad is bullying him. Does that justify it? Absolutely not. But at least it gives you some better context to sort of humanize the individual before you get to start trying to jump to your cancellations and saying, like, oh, he's not worth anything despite all of his positive contributions that this nigga has done to the black community. Positive contribution this dude has done to just the arts, the role model that he's provided for God knows how many people, and you're going to try to use a single example and say, nope, that's enough to just undermine all the good work he's done and all the good works his wife has done. Get freak out of here. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. I don't think that makes any sense. Do I wish he probably didn't do it? I guess probably. Yeah, sure. Yes. I don't think you should get violent, but I think I can completely understand why he did it. I kind of stand with Will in this situation. He apologized. We're going to move the freak on. I can't wait for his next movie. I'm going to buy tickets for myself and whoever else is with me and a few extra tickets just in case, you know what I'm saying, just to go ahead and show him some support. He's one of the best actors of all time. I love his movies. Yeah, I just can't wait to see more of him. He'll just go ahead and go to producing some biopics about some really positive, influential black people like, I don't have to name them. Y'all know what's good. We'll see more of him. And I'll go ahead and keep waiting for Chris Rock to be more of a supporter of more anti-blackness in his stand-ups and in his interviews and things like that, and his documentaries. And he'll just continue to be the person that he's been, who's antagonistic to black people, literally being a coon. That's what Chris Rock decided to do, and I'm hoping that Will Smith slapped a little bit of that coon taste out of his mouth. Anyway, I hope you like my video. I'm always open to discussing these things. Leave me a comment. You can always follow my Twitch and find and I'm willing to engage in conversations about these kind of things. Please follow the twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatiq. Follow hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can watch my next videos. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm gonna be honest, I might miss it if it's too many comments, but you can always DM me on Discord or I'm live on Twitch or something. Thank you guys for watching this video, and don't forget to check out my music under the name Fanatiq, Fanatiq. Catch you in the next one. Peace.